take 20. We're getting up there in numbers. Oh. All right. So, my epoch was the Eocene time period. Or, yeah, the Eocene time period, which is about 50 million years ago, if I believe that's right. Oh, that was cool. Anyways, what it looked like. So around this time, it actually looks pretty modern for the U.S., or not the U.S., but just the world in general. Um, a lot of the continents began to take their modern shape during this time, with the exception of a couple of waterways opening up. So mainly between Australia and Antarctica, we see that gap widen right there, and it causes this sort of global circulation pattern to distribute temperatures a little bit more evenly around the Earth, which causes a little bit more temperate climate. So if you like temperate climate, then there's a temperate climate. And then also the Tethys Sea is covering a lot of Europe at this time, a lot of that excess water. Great for taking the kids boating or your family boating. Take your boat out. So, yeah. Mountains during this time. There's a lot of interesting little mountain formations going on. In the North American region, we see the Rocky Mountains being formed due to the unusually shallow subduction that produced the uplift to form them. In the later Eocene, we see volcanic activity increase all along the Cordilleran belts, and that suggests that shallow subduction had ceased by this point. The downgoing plate was returning to its normal dip, possibly even collapsing, thus triggering crust melting all along the entire extent of western North America. And as a result, we get a lot of these beautiful mountains. Also, the Himalayas and Alps are occurring due to Africa and India running into Eurasia a lot during this time. Don't exactly remember if which one of these was a good skiing location. I think the Rockies were, and then I'm not so sure about skiing down the Himalayas. That might be a little dangerous. But moving on. Uh, so the climate during this time, it's very hot and humid. We'll learn very early on. Uh, this is mainly due to the Paleocene Eocene thermal maximum, which is this huge release of methane gas, which sort of traps all the heat within the Earth in this hothouse effect, which we're kind of seeing a little bit of that today. So as the continents move ever closer to their present-day locations, this plate activity alters ocean and air circulation. Remember that Australia and Antarctica widening gap that causes all those temperatures to sort of reach not an equilibrium, but sort of distribute a little bit more evenly and cool down. Um, so by the end of the Eocene, we see temperatures cool considerably and a drying period commences. So if you are old and like Floridian weather, I suppose, then the early Eocene is for you. Um, but if you're young and still got years to live, the dry and arid climate may be for you. Who knows? Uh, Give it a shot. All right. So oceans and atmosphere at this time. Can you breathe? Yeah, you can breathe. Around this time, oceans and atmospheres had more or less formed to the point that they had today. The exceptions include the waterway between Asia and Europe again, and that separation of Australia and Antarctica. So oceans were teeming with life at this time during the warm water period. If you want to go swimming with whales, try not to get eaten and sawed in half at your own risk, but the waters are nice and warm at this time. Geological evidence suggests that atmospheric carbon dioxide levels actually reached 1,000 parts per million in the early Eocene, which is more than twice the present day level of 412 parts per million. So, not great considering that at 1,500 parts per million, humans start to feel nauseous and dizzy. So, try not to do any over extensive activity or much running. Tread carefully. Anyways, flora and fauna during this time. So, heat and humid-loving trees dominated the early Eocene during this time, with more deciduous forests spreading during the later colder Eocene. Several new mammal groups arrived in North America, like ar- artiodactyls and primates. A lot of these had features like long, thin legs, feet, and hands capable of grasping, as well as differentiated teeth for chewing different sorts of food. So we see a lot of biodiversification. Mammals were many versions of themselves during this time due to the hot climate favoring more smaller things. And then they increased in size towards the end of the epoch a little bit. Hoofed animals were also introduced during this time. So you probably are wondering, for the safety of your kids and petting zoos everywhere, how petable are they? So I did the duty of making this little graph for you to demonstrate what is the safety for your kids. Um, on the left side, we see a ancestor of the horse, which is very small at this point. I expect them to give toddler or your toddler a nice high five and a pat on the back. Trees also around this time, I don't really expect a tree to pose that much of a problem to your family's safety or well-being. So those are pretty stable. Those two in between, those two animals in between, I do not remember, but they do look pretty aggressive, so watch out. And on the right, we see an ancestor of rhinos, which would not be featured in any sort of petting zoo, I believe. And then on the right, we see a Mesonyx, which is a top predator during this time. I also don't expect them to be featured in the zoo, so you're safe for now. So, the role of plate tectonics during this time, the continents took their modern shape a lot, allowing for isolation and biodiversification that can be seen in Earth's ecosystems today. Hot climate can be attributed again to release in possible greenhouse gases such as methane, and then this trend was reversed once waterways split due to tectonic activity, causing the Earth's temperatures to distribute in a cooling manner, and this affected the size and spread of mammals greatly, allowing for better diversification due to isolation. So, if you want an isolated place with hot weather or more arid weather, and you want great places to swim, great mountains to get these great views from, or ski, then the Eocene is your time period. So, that is the end of the video. Goodbye.